The sound of a phone hitting the floor echoed through the apartment as Alara Vaughn's hands trembled. Her eyes remained fixed on the screen, where 3 gray dots pulsed mockingly. Someone was typing a response to her drunken tirade, someone whose contact information simply read, "Han," not Miles Trask, not her insufferable boss. The dots disappeared. Then a message appeared. "Interesting. Most people don't speak to me this way and live to tell about it. You've got my attention." Alara's blood turned to ice as reality crashed down on her. She hadn't texted her boss at all. If you're enjoying this story already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly stories of dangerous romance, unlikely connections, and thrilling adventures. So let's get back to Alara's accidental text that's about to change everything. 8 hours earlier, Alara sat in the glass-walled conference room of Lumen Marketing, her perfectly manicured nails tapping rhythmically against the polished table. The Boston skyline stretched behind her, but her attention was locked on Miles Trask, who was busy presenting her campaign ideas as if they were his own. "As I conceptualized this approach," Miles said, gesturing to slides Alara had created, "I realized we needed to focus on authenticity rather than trend-chasing." Ilara's jaw tightened. That was verbatim what she'd told him yesterday. "Remarkable insight, Miles," said Regina, the VP of Marketing. "This is exactly the fresh thinking we need." Alara raised her hand slightly. "I'm glad you like the direction. I was hoping to expand on some of those concepts." "Let's stay focused on the approved messaging," Miles cut in smoothly. "Alara can assist with implementation, of course." Assist. Always the assistant, never the creator. 5 years at Lumen, and she remained invisible except when blame needed assigning. When the meeting ended, Alara gathered her notes with careful control while her colleagues filtered out. Only when the room emptied did she allow herself a moment of unguarded frustration, breathing deeply as she stared at the skyline. "Something wrong with the view?" Miles appeared at the doorway, smirking slightly. "The view is perfect," Alara replied coolly. "Just contemplating perspectives." "Speaking of perspectives, your presentation support was adequate. But next time try to back me up more proactively." "Back you up?" Alara's voice rose slightly. "Miles, those were my concepts, my research, my slides." Miles leaned against the doorframe. "Your concepts were rough drafts that needed refinement. I polished them. That's teamwork, Alara, something to consider before your performance review next month." The threat hung in the air like smoke. "I understand perfectly," she said, gathering her things. "If you'll excuse me, I have a client call." As she walked past him, Miles added, "Oh, and I'll need you to rework the Henderson proposal this weekend. Their CEO wasn't thrilled with the direction." "The direction you changed against my recommendation," she said under her breath. "What was that?" "I said, I'll handle it this weekend." Miles smiled thinly. "That's the attitude that'll get you places, Alara." Eventually. 12 hours? 2 bottles of wine, and 3 angry playlists later, Alara paced her apartment in fuzzy socks, her curls piled high in a satin-wrapped bun. The city lights of Boston twinkled through her windows as she ranted to her empty living room. 5 years of watching mediocre white men take credit for my work." She pointed accusingly at her reflection in the window. "And what do? Smile and say, 'Yes, sir,' while Miles builds his career on my ideas." She grabbed her phone, navigating to a contact she rarely used, her boss's personal number, saved only for emergencies. The wine had convinced her this qualified. "I should just quit," she muttered, thumbs flying across the screen. "Just tell him exactly what I think." The message grew longer as years of frustration poured out. When she finished, she read it back with wine-induced satisfaction. "Miles, I quit. I'm done watching you steal my ideas and treat me like I should be grateful for the opportunity to be your intellectual ATM. For 5 years, I've worked harder, produced better results, and shown more integrity than you ever will. The Henderson account? My concept that you butchered. Today's presentation? My work that you claimed. I don't need a performance review from someone who couldn't create an original thought if his country club membership depended on it. Keep your toxic workplace and mediocre career. I'll be taking my talents somewhere they're actually appreciated. Don't expect 2 weeks' notice. Consider this my professional goodbye and personal good riddance. Alara." "Damn," she whispered, admiring her handiwork. "That feels good." With a decisive finger, she pressed send. The satisfaction lasted approximately 12 seconds before morphing into panic. "Oh God," she whispered, suddenly feeling much more sober. "Did I really just do that?" She checked the sent message, and her stomach dropped. The text hadn't gone to Miles Trask at all. It had gone to a contact labeled simply Han, someone whose number she didn't recognize. A misdial from weeks ago that she'd saved to avoid calling again by mistake. The irony wasn't lost on her. No, she muttered, frantically typing an apology. Before she could send it, 3 dots appeared. Then the reply came. Interesting. Most people don't speak to me this way and live to tell about it. You've got my attention. Ilara froze. The wine-induced courage evaporated instantly. A second message arrived. This Miles sounds like an unfortunate business associate. Though I believe you've contacted the wrong person, I find myself curious about someone brave enough to burn bridges so thoroughly. Ilara stared at her phone, mind racing. The person texting her didn't sound like some random stranger. The tone, confident, slightly amused with an underlying edge, sent a chill down her spine. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Common sense said to apologize and never respond again. But something else, curiosity, wine, or perhaps the thrill of speaking her mind for once, compelled her to reply. I'm sorry for the misdirected message. Clearly not my finest moment. Though I stand by every word intended for its original recipient. The response came quickly. Honesty. Refreshing. Most people who contact me accidentally beg forgiveness or disappear. You do neither. Ilara bit her lip, wondering who exactly this person was. The way they spoke suggested someone accustomed to authority. I don't beg, she typed back, then immediately regretted the boldness. 3 dots. Then, I can tell. Your Miles is fortunate you merely quit instead of something more permanent. Some in my position would offer to solve your problem more definitively. A cold wash of realization hit Ilara. The phrasing, the confidence, the casual allusion to violence. Your position? She ventured cautiously. Let's just say I handle problems for people who can afford my services, Ms. Ilara hesitated. Vaughn. Ilara Vaughn. Ms. Vaughn. I am Han, Jae-hoon Han, though most call me Kai. She quickly opened her laptop and searched the name. Results in Korean appeared first, followed by English articles mentioning the Han Syndicate, a prominent Korean business conglomerate with whispered connections to organized crime in Seoul. Her phone buzzed again. Are you researching me, Ms. Vaughn? You'll find the public record incomplete. Ilara's hands trembled as she typed back, Are you implying you're some kind of criminal? I prefer businessman with flexible ethics. The criminal label lacks nuance. She stared at her screen, wine-addled brain struggling to process. She'd accidentally texted a Korean Mafia boss. This had to be a joke. Prove it, she typed impulsively. The phone remained silent for a full minute. Then a photo arrived, a man in his mid-30s with sharp features, dark eyes, and a tailored black suit. He sat at an ornate desk, the Seoul skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. His expression was neutral, but his eyes held something dangerous and compelling. Satisfied, Ms. Vaughn? Or shall I demonstrate my credentials further? Ilara swallowed hard, studying the image. The man radiated authority and danger. I believe you, she replied. Good. Now, about your predicament. I find myself with a rare moment of curiosity. Tell me, what talents does this Miles person so eagerly claim as his own? Ilara hesitated. Was she really having this conversation? With a stranger? A dangerous stranger? I'm a marketing strategist. I specialize in narrative-driven campaigns that connect emotionally with consumers. A storyteller, then. Someone who understands human motivation and how to redirect it. Valuable skills in any business. Despite herself, Ilara felt a flush of pride. Yes, exactly. That's what Miles doesn't understand. Marketing isn't manipulation, it's connection. An interesting perspective, though in my experience the line between connection and manipulation often blurs. Ilara found herself sinking onto her couch, phone clutched in her hand. The difference is consent. People know they're being marketed to. The best campaigns make them want to be part of the story anyway. Consent, Kai replied, a concept many in my line of work struggle with. The conversation was surreal, dangerous, and yet, Ilara felt strangely seen in a way Miles had never bothered to see her. It's late in Boston, isn't it? Kai texted, almost morning in Seoul, yet here we are discussing ethics and consent with a stranger who received your professional suicide note by mistake? Ilara laughed despite herself. When you put it that way, it sounds completely insane. The best connections often begin that way. Sleep, Ms. Vaughn. Perhaps we'll speak again. The message felt like both permission and a command. Before she could overthink it, Ilara typed back, Good night, Mr. Han. Kai, came the immediate reply. My associates call me Mr. Han. You're something else entirely. Alara woke the next morning with a pounding headache and the immediate sinking realization that last night hadn't been a dream. She fumbled for her phone, unchecking the text thread with growing horror. She'd had a friendly conversation with a man who all but admitted to being involved in organized crime. Worse, she'd found him intriguing. As if sensing her thoughts, a new message appeared. Good morning, Ms. Vaughn. Have you reconsidered your career options in the sobering light of day? She stared at the screen. The smart thing would be to block this number and pretend the whole thing never happened. Instead, she found herself typing, still processing the reality of accidentally drunk texting a mafia boss instead of my actual boss. Fortune favors the bold, they say, though in your case, perhaps fortune merely has a sense of humor. The response made her smile despite herself. I don't suppose you're hiring in your Boston office? 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times, as if Kai was considering his response carefully. Actually, I've been considering expanding certain legitimate business interests to the American East Coast. Perhaps this happy accident is timely. Alara blinked at the screen. Was he serious? Are you offering me a job? I'm suggesting a conversation. Tonight, 9 p.m. your time, video call. I'll send the details if you're interested. She should say no. This was madness. I'll be available, she typed instead. The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. Alara called in sick to work, unable to face Miles after her near resignation. Instead, she researched everything she could find about Jae-hoon Han and the Han Syndicate. The official record painted him as the heir to a legitimate business empire spanning real estate, technology, and entertainment. But buried in forums and translated news articles were whispers of other activities, protection rackets, smuggling operations, and strategic arrangements with politicians. At precisely 9 p.m., her laptop chimed with an incoming call from an encrypted service she'd downloaded at Kai's instruction. With a deep breath, she clicked accept. The screen flickered, revealing the man from the photo. In motion, he was even more imposing, sharp jawline, penetrating gaze, and an aura of absolute control. He sat at the same desk, but now wore a charcoal suit with a crimson tie. Seoul's skyline glittered with morning light behind him. Ms. Vaughn, he said, his voice deep with just a hint of an accent. Thank you for joining me. Alara straightened her posture, grateful she'd changed into a professional blouse despite the casual setting of her apartment. Thank you for the invitation, though I'm still not entirely sure why I'm here. Kai's lips curved slightly. Curiosity, mine and yours. You intrigue me, Alara Vaughn. Not many people accidentally contact me, and fewer still engage in philosophical debates afterward. I was drunk, she admitted. Alcohol lowers inhibitions. It doesn't fundamentally change character. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me about your work. The real work, not what Miles claims. To her surprise, Alara found herself speaking freely about her campaigns, her approach to storytelling, her frustrations with corporate America's tendency to reward mediocre men while overlooking talented women, especially women of color. Kai listened with unexpected intensity, asking occasional questions that revealed a sharp business mind. Your insights about emotional connection would translate well to my enterprises, he finally said. People often misunderstand my business as being primarily about force. In reality, it's about relationships, loyalty, understanding what people truly want. And what is your business exactly? Alara asked boldly. The parts that don't make it into press releases? Kai's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sparked with something like appreciation. Problem solving, Ms. Vaughn. When traditional channels fail, people come to me. Sometimes that involves financial arrangements, sometimes political connections, occasionally more direct intervention. You mean violence. I mean whatever proves necessary. His tone remained conversational. The world operates on power hierarchies. I simply acknowledge them honestly. Alara shook her head. That's a convenient way to frame organized crime. To her surprise, Kai laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his severe features. Most people wouldn't dare speak to me so directly. I'm not most people, Alara replied, and technically I still don't know if you're really who you claim to be. His smile faded, replaced by something more calculated. A fair point. What would convince you, I wonder? Before she could answer, a sharp knock sounded at her door. Are you expecting company? Kai asked, his tone suddenly alert. No, Alara whispered, fear spiking through her. Answer it, he instructed, but keep your phone with you. Heart pounding, Alara approached her door and looked through the peephole. A delivery person stood outside holding a small package. "There's a delivery," she said, relief washing over her. "Accept it," Kai said simply. She opened the door, signed for the package, and returned to her laptop. "Open it," Kai instructed, watching her intently. With trembling fingers, Alara unwrapped the small box. Inside lay an exquisite jade pendant on a platinum chain, alongside a handwritten note in elegant script. "To our unconventional introduction. J.H." She looked up at the screen, speechless. "How did you—" "I have resources, Ms. Vaughn, globally." His expression remained unreadable. "Consider it a demonstration of both capability and intent." "Intent?" "I'm offering you an opportunity. Not employment in the traditional sense, but a consultation arrangement. Your insights on certain business expansions in exchange for, let's call it, protection and patronage." Alara held the pendant, its weight substantial in her palm. "You want to hire me as your marketing consultant, based on a misdirected text? I make decisions quickly when I see value. You possess a unique perspective that could benefit my legitimate enterprises." He paused. "And perhaps the others as well, though your involvement there would remain distant and theoretical." The offer hung in the air between them. Alara knew she should refuse immediately. This man was dangerous. His business likely involved activities that went against everything she believed in. And yet— "I need time to consider," she said finally. Kai nodded once. "Reasonable. 3 days. We'll speak again." The call ended abruptly, leaving Alara staring at her reflection in the dark screen, the jade pendant cool against her skin. Over the next 3 days, Alara moved through her life as if in a dream. She returned to work, facing Miles with a newfound detachment that seemed to unsettle him. His barbs and subtle threats bounced off her like raindrops. "The Henderson account needs complete reworking," he announced during a team meeting. Alara's concept missed the mark entirely. Instead of defending herself or seething silently, she simply smiled. "I'd be happy to review their feedback directly." Miles blinked, wrong-footed by her calm. "That won't be necessary. I'll handle the client relationship." "Of course," she replied, turning her attention back to her notes. Throughout it all, Kai's jade pendant remained in her apartment, like a tangible reminder of the strange connection she'd formed with a dangerous man on the other side of the world. Each night, she took it out, weighing it in her palm as she weighed her options. On the third night, precisely at 9 p.m., her phone chimed with a message. "Your decision?" She'd prepared a polite refusal, crafted from logical arguments about safety and ethics. Instead, she found herself typing, "I'm interested in discussing terms." The video call came immediately. This time, Kai wasn't alone. 2 men in dark suits stood silently in the background of what appeared to be a private lounge rather than his office. "Ms. Vaughn," he greeted her, "I'm pleased you're open to collaboration." "With boundaries," she clarified. "I need to understand exactly what you're asking of me." Kai nodded to the men behind him, who promptly exited the frame. Initially, consultation on branding for Han Enterprises' expansion into American markets, legitimate businesses only, technology investments, entertainment properties, real estate. And the illegitimate businesses? His expression remained neutral. Would remain separate, though your insights into American cultural psychology could prove valuable theoretically. "Theoretically," she echoed skeptically. "You needn't concern yourself with those aspects, Alara." It was the first time he'd used her first name, and something in his tone made it feel significant. "Your hands would remain clean." Before she could respond, Kai glanced at something off-screen, his expression hardening momentarily. "An issue requires my attention," he said, returning his gaze to her. "Consider this. Your current employer undervalues you. I never would. Think about what you truly want from your career, your life. I can provide opportunities beyond anything Miles Trask could imagine." The call ended, leaving Alara with more questions than answers. Yet one thing was becoming increasingly clear. The strange connection she felt to Kai wasn't diminishing with time or distance. If you're enjoying this unexpected romance that started with one wrong text, now's the perfect time to hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment about what you think Alara should do, and don't forget to like this video to help others find it too. Now, let's see what happens when Alara's world collides with Kai's dangerous reality. 2 weeks later, Alara found herself boarding a plane to Seoul. The sequence of events leading to this moment still felt surreal. Her formal resignation from Lumen, Miles's shocked expression had been worth 5 years of frustration, the consulting contract with Han Enterprises offering triple her previous salary, and the persistent, intriguing text conversations with Kai that had evolved from business to something far more personal. As she settled into her first-class seat, another perk of her new arrangement, she reflected on their last video call. "Why me?" she'd asked directly. "There must be hundreds of marketing consultants more qualified." Kai had studied her silently for a moment before responding. Qualified, perhaps, but none who showed such fearlessness, such authenticity. His gaze had intensified. "I value those qualities above experience. Experience can be gained. A character cannot." Now, as the plane took off, Alara wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or embracing her greatest adventure. Seoul greeted her with a symphony of lights and energy. A black sedan waited on the tarmac, bypassing normal customs procedures through what Kai had called special arrangements. The driver, a stoic man named Minho, spoke little during the drive to her hotel, a luxury property owned by Han Enterprises. "Mr. Han extends his apologies," Minho finally said as they approached the gleaming tower. "Urgent business prevents him from greeting you personally. He will meet you tomorrow morning." Alara nodded, fighting disappointment. "Of course. Business first." Minho's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Han has prepared your suite personally. Most unusual." The suite turned out to be a stunning penthouse with panoramic views of Seoul. Fresh flowers filled every room, and a handwritten note awaited her on the dining table. "Welcome to Seoul. Rest well. Tomorrow your new life begins. Kai." Next to the note lay a small box containing a sleek smartphone. "For secure communications," read a second note. "My number is the only one programmed." Barely had she set it down when it chimed with a message. "Did you arrive safely?" "The penthouse is excessive," she texted back. "But yes, safely arrived." "Nothing about your welcome is excessive. Sleep well, Alara." She smiled at the screen, then chided herself for the flutter in her stomach. This was business, not romance, no matter how the lines seemed to blur whenever they spoke. Morning came with another message. "Breakfast on your terrace. 9 a.m., dress comfortably." At precisely 9, Alara stepped onto the terrace to find Kai already seated at a table laden with food. He rose as she approached, and she was struck again by his commanding presence. In person, without the barrier of screens between them, he radiated a controlled power that was both intimidating and magnetic. "Alara," he said, his voice warmer than in their calls. "Finally, we meet properly." He took her hand, his touch lingering slightly longer than necessary. "This is surreal," she admitted as they sat. "A month ago I was miserable in Boston. Now I'm having breakfast in Seoul with, he prompted, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "With a man whose business card probably doesn't say Mafia boss," she finished dryly. Kai laughed, the sound transforming his severe features. "It says Executive Chairman, Han Enterprises, though admittedly that covers a multitude of activities." As they ate, their conversation flowed easily from business to personal topics. Kai spoke of growing up as the heir to his father's empire, the weight of expectations, and his vision for legitimizing much of the family business. "Criminal enterprises are inefficient long-term," he explained, too dependent on individual relationships and force. "True power comes from systems, legal frameworks, financial structures, political influence." "Is that why you're expanding to America? Legitimacy?" His eyes met hers. "Partially, though recently I've discovered another compelling reason to strengthen ties there." The implication hung in the air between them, electric and unspoken. After breakfast, Kai gave her a tour of Han Tower, 30 stories of steel and glass housing the headquarters of his legitimate businesses. Employees bowed respectfully as he passed, their expressions a mixture of deference and fear. "This afternoon we have a strategy meeting with my executive team," Kai explained as they entered a private elevator. "But first, I want to show you something." The elevator descended to a sub-level not listed on the directory. When the doors opened, Alara found herself in what appeared to be a command center. Multiple screens displayed security feeds, financial data, and surveillance imagery. "This is the heart of Han Enterprises' security division," Kai said quietly. "Few outsiders ever see this." A dozen men and women worked at various stations, all pausing momentarily to acknowledge Kai before returning to their tasks with increased focus. "Why show me this?" Alara asked, uncomfortable with the implication. "Because trust must be mutual." His eyes held hers. I'm trusting you with knowledge that could harm me. You need to understand exactly whom you've aligned yourself with." Before she could respond, a young man approached hurriedly, bowing to Kai before speaking rapidly in Korean. Kai's expression darkened. He responded sharply, then turned to Alara. "I apologize, but an urgent situation requires my attention. Jinwoo will escort you back to your suite." "Is everything okay?" she asked, sensing the sudden tension. "A minor disagreement with business associates," he replied, his tone suddenly distant. "Nothing for you to worry about." But that evening, as Alara watched the local news with the help of translation software, she saw reports of a confrontation between rival business factions that had left 2 men hospitalized. The report didn't name the Han Syndicate directly, but the location matched an address she'd seen on one of the security monitors. Her secure phone chimed, "Tomorrow's meetings are postponed. Remain in the hotel. Security has been enhanced." Alara stared at the message, reality crashing down around her. This wasn't a game or an adventure. This was a dangerous world she barely understood. "What happened today?" she texted back. The response came quickly. "Business complications. You're safe." "That's not an answer, Kai." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before his reply. "The Park Syndicate is challenging territory agreements. Today's incident was a message. My response will ensure it's not repeated." The clinical way he described what was clearly violence sent a chill through her. "Is this the world I've stepped into?" she wrote before she could reconsider. His response was immediate. "Yes and no. You operate adjacent to this world, not within it. I promised your hands would remain clean, and they will." She paced the penthouse, the luxury surroundings suddenly feeling like a gilded cage. "I need to understand what I've gotten myself into," she texted finally. "No sanitized version." Minutes passed without a response. Then, instead of a text, a call came through. "Get dressed," Kai said without preamble. "Business attire. I'll collect you in 30 minutes." Exactly half an hour later, Alara opened her door to find Kai waiting, his expression grave. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, but a barely perceptible tension in his shoulders betrayed the strain he was under. "Where are we going?" she asked as they entered the private elevator. "To a business meeting." His gaze met hers. "You wanted to understand. Tonight, you will." The sedan took them through Seoul's glittering streets to a traditional-style building nestled incongruously among modern towers. Armed men nodded respectfully as Kai escorted her inside. The interior revealed an exclusive restaurant, minimalist and elegant. In a private room at the back, 5 older men sat around a low table, conversation halting as Kai entered with Alara at his side. "Gentlemen," Kai said in English, his hand resting lightly on Alara's back, "may I present Alara Vaughn, my American consultant?" The men evaluated her with undisguised curiosity. One, clearly the eldest, spoke in Korean. "Elder Park asks why you bring an outsider to such a sensitive meeting," Kai translated smoothly. Before he could respond for her, Alara stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Because I'm not here as a consultant tonight," she said clearly. "I'm here as a witness, someone who can see clearly because I stand outside your world." Kai translated her words, his voice betraying a hint of surprise. Elder Park's expression shifted from suspicion to interest. What followed was the most surreal negotiation of Alara's life. Though much was said in Korean, she gathered they were discussing territorial boundaries, profit sharing from various enterprises, and reparations for the earlier confrontation. Throughout it all, Sakai maintained absolute control, his voice never rising, his demeanor never betraying the danger that hummed beneath every exchange. Alara watched in fascination as he navigated the complex power dynamics, making concessions where necessary while yielding nothing essential. When they finally left, nearly 3 hours later, Kai was silent until they were safely in the car. "You surprised me tonight," he said finally. "Inserting yourself into the conversation was dangerous." "But effective," she countered. "They were curious about me, about why you'd bring an American woman to such a meeting. I used that curiosity." "You did?" A hint of admiration colored his voice. "Elder Park asked if you were my woman. I told him you were something far more valuable, someone who sees truth." Alara's heart raced at the implication. "And what is the truth, Kai?" He turned to face her fully, the city lights playing across his features. "That I've spent my life building and protecting an empire I never questioned, until a misdirected text made me see it through fresh eyes." Their gazes held, the air between them charged with unspoken possibility. "I should thank Miles for being such an awful boss," she said softly. "Otherwise, I'd never have sent that text." "I have a better idea," Kai replied, a dangerous smile playing at his lips. Let me show you what happens to people who underestimate exceptional women in my world. 2 weeks later, Alara sat in another conference room, this one in Boston, at the headquarters of Lumen Marketing's largest client. Across from her sat Miles Trask, his expression oscillating between confusion and thinly veiled panic. As I was saying, continued the client's CEO, we're extremely impressed with Han Enterprises' proposal for global expansion. Their understanding of both Asian and American markets is unparalleled. Their team is quite persuasive, Miles managed, shooting a bewildered glance at Alara. Indeed, she replied smoothly. Mr. Han personally oversaw this proposal, given its strategic importance. The meeting concluded with handshakes all around, except for Miles, who sat frozen as his career's largest account transferred to Han Enterprises' newly established American division. In the elevator afterward, Miles finally found his voice. How? He demanded. How did you go from quitting to representing a global conglomerate in 2 weeks? Alara smiled, fingering the jade pendant that now rarely left her neck. I sent a message to the right person, Miles. Sometimes that's all it takes. 3 months later, Alara stood on the balcony of her Seoul apartment, watching the city lights shimmer. Her life had transformed completely, dividing time between Boston and Seoul, overseeing Han Enterprises' expanding legitimate business interests in America, and growing increasingly entwined with Kai himself. Their relationship defied simple categorization. Professional partners, certainly. Friends, unexpectedly. And something more, unacknowledged but undeniable in the way his eyes followed her, in the casual touches that lingered just seconds too long. Her secure phone chimed with a message. Dinner tonight? There's something we need to discuss. Should I be worried? She texted back. Always, came his reply. But not about dinner. Kai arrived precisely on time, as always, but something in his demeanor seemed different, a tension she hadn't seen since the confrontation with the park syndicate. What's wrong? She asked as they settled at her dining table, the meal delivered earlier by his personal chef. Kai studied her face for a long moment. We have a problem. The American expansion has attracted attention, not all of it welcome. Competitors? The FBI. He said it calmly, but Alara felt the floor shift beneath her. They're investigating potential connections between Han Enterprises and organized crime. Are there connections? She asked carefully. Increasingly fewer, he admitted. Your influence has accelerated our legitimization efforts, but history leaves traces, Alara. She set down her chopsticks. Am I in danger? Not from the investigation itself. Your involvement is recent and exclusively with legitimate operations. He paused, but there's another complication. Someone is providing information to both the FBI and rival syndicates, a betrayal from within. Who? That's what I need to discover, and quickly. His eyes met hers. I may need to handle this traditionally. The implication hung heavy between them. You mean violence, she said quietly. I mean justice, by my world's standards. He reached across the table, taking her hand. This puts us at a crossroads, Alara. If you wish to step away, return to America permanently, I would understand. Is that what you want? What I want, he said carefully, has never been the primary consideration in my life. Duty comes first. That's not an answer. Kai's expression softened. No, I don't want you to leave, but I won't expose you to danger or compromise your principles. Alara considered his words, the weight of the decision before her. This man lived in a world of violence and power she'd only glimpsed. Yet in the months she'd known him, she'd seen his efforts to evolve beyond it, to build something that wouldn't require the shedding of blood to maintain. I'm not leaving, she said finally, but I need your word that we find another way, not violence. You're asking me to abandon generations of tradition, he said, though his tone held no anger. In my world, betrayal demands blood. Your world is changing, Kai. You've been changing it. She tightened her grip on his hand. Let me help you find the traitor another way. For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. 3 days, he said. If we haven't identified them by then, I do it my way. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of activity. Alara immersed herself in financial records, communication logs, and personnel files, applying her marketing insights about human psychology to identify patterns of behavior that might reveal the traitor. On the 3rd day, as the deadline loomed, she found it, a series of seemingly innocuous marketing reports sent to American consultants that contained embedded data about Han Enterprises' security protocols. Young Min Seo, she told Kai, presenting her evidence in his private office. He's been with you for 6 years, promoted rapidly, but his lifestyle exceeds his salary, and these reports, she indicated the files spread across his desk, contain coded information about your security systems and movement patterns. Kai studied the evidence silently, his expression unreadable. Then he pressed a button on his desk, speaking rapid Korean. Within minutes, a terrified young man was escorted into the office by 2 of Kai's security team. Min Seo, Kai said calmly in English, for Alara's benefit. Ms. Vaughn has made an interesting discovery about your communications with our American partners. The man's eyes darted between them, fear evident in his expression. He responded in Korean, his voice pleading. He claims ignorance. Kai translated, his tone flat. Says the reports were standard templates. Alara stepped forward. The embedded data follows a pattern that exactly matches FBI surveillance protocols. That's not coincidence, Min Seo. The young man's expression crumbled. He fell to his knees, words pouring out in a desperate stream. He says the FBI approached him a year ago, Kai translated, his voice tightly controlled, threatened to deport his sister from America if he didn't cooperate. Later, the Park Syndicate discovered his arrangement and blackmailed him into providing them information as well. Alara watched the young man's terror, feeling a complex mix of vindication and pity. What happens to him now? She asked quietly. Kai's eyes met hers, something ancient and dangerous flickering in their depths. Traditionally? Death? Min Seo didn't need translation. The word was clear enough. He began sobbing, forehead pressed to the floor. Alara held Kai's gaze steadily. And now? In the world you're building? For a long moment, the office was silent, save for Min Seo's quiet sobs. Then Kai spoke, his voice carrying the weight of decision. Take him to the secondary facility, he instructed his men in English. Full security protocols, no communication with anyone until I determine his fate. As the guards led Min Seo away, Kai turned to Alara. You found the traitor without bloodshed, as promised. His punishment remains mine to decide. Kai, this isn't a negotiation, Alara. His tone softened slightly, but I will consider alternatives to tradition. It was the most he would concede, she knew. This world of his, their world now in some ways, operated by different rules. Rules she was slowly learning to navigate without losing herself in the process. That later that night, as they stood on the balcony of his penthouse overlooking the city, Kai finally spoke of what had been building between them for months. When you first texted me, he said, his voice quiet against the night air, I was amused, then intrigued, then, she prompted when he didn't continue, then something changed. He turned to face her. I've built my life around control, Alara. Every decision calculated, every risk measured. You were never part of any calculation. Is that good or bad? She asked, heart racing. Terrifying, he admitted, a rare vulnerability in his expression, and exhilarating. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness. I don't know how to do this. My world doesn't allow for what? She whispered. For wanting someone so much it clouds judgment. For caring about someone whose safety I can't guarantee. He hesitated, then finished simply, for love. The word hung in the air between them, more dangerous than any business negotiation or syndicate confrontation. Love is always a risk, Alara said softly, even without Mafia complications. His laugh was brief but genuine. A risk analysis would advise strongly against this. Good thing I never did like playing it safe. She stepped closer, eliminating the distance between them. I accidentally texted a Mafia boss, moved to Seoul, and helped catch a traitor. Safe choices aren't exactly my specialty anymore. When his lips finally met hers, it felt inevitable, as if every message, every conversation, every shared moment had been leading to this collision of worlds. His kiss was like him, controlled, yet passionate, demanding, yet giving. When they finally pulled apart, Kai rested his forehead against hers. This complicates everything. Everything worth having usually does. In the days that followed, they navigated their new reality carefully. Publicly, Alara remained his American consultant, overseeing legitimate business expansion. Privately, they built something neither had expected, a connection that bridged their different worlds. Min Seo's fate was decided without bloodshed. Exile rather than death, his family relocated under Han protection to ensure the Parks couldn't retaliate against them. It was a compromise that satisfied neither tradition nor Alara's Western sensibilities completely, but represented something new. Evolution. 3 months later, as they prepared for a business trip to Boston, Kai presented Alara with a small box. A gift, he said simply, for our return to where it all began. Inside lay a phone, identical to the one she'd used that fateful night to send her misdirected text. Turn it on, he instructed. When she did, the screen showed a single message draft addressed to Alara Vaughn rather than Miles Trask. Some people spend their lives searching for the right connection. I found mine through a wrong number. Will you stay connected to me permanently? Kai. Her eyes widened as she looked up to find him watching her intently. Are you proposing via text message? She asked, laughter bubbling beneath the words. It seemed fitting, he replied, a rare smile transforming his features, given how we began. You know this is crazy, right? A marketing executive and a mafia boss? Former mafia boss, he corrected, increasingly legitimate businessman, thanks largely to his brilliant American consultant. And future wife? She asked softly. His answer was a kiss that promised a future neither could have imagined, one built on a single misdirected text that changed everything. If you enjoyed this story of an accidental text that led to unexpected love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling romance tales. Hit that like button and leave a comment telling us what you thought about Alara and Kai's journey. Remember, sometimes the wrong number can lead to exactly the right connection. Until next time.